Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the ASX and Sectors weekly chart analysis for the week ending 5th of July 2024. First chart is the S&P ASX 200 index, the XJO. This is the parent index for the Australian Stock Exchange. If we put some lines in, the market was moving higher here. This is the high of the range here. This was a low volume push high here. This was Christmas and New Year's on low volumes down here. We drag this line across further, that forms the lows of the range with a mini low in here. You can see the market traded as an inside bar this week, and as expected, or as you would expect, volume was reduced as it traded inside the previous bar's range. You can see that there was some testing for supply below the previous close initially, then a push higher and a close. In fact, many of the charts this week look very similar to that. If we go back to the daily chart, you'll see more clearly. This was Thursday a week ago and Friday a week ago. This was a shakeout in the background and a little bit of an absorption bar. It looks a bit threatening, and the market has treated it with some respect by moving back and consolidating in response. And that's the period of consolidation here. Then the market pushed higher with some real intent, and then on Friday the market has consolidated sideways. And much of the local market has traded in that fashion this week, with some consolidation initially to absorb any supply, and then pushed higher in response to the lack of supply and the buying in the market, and then consolidated with a relatively narrow spread, effectively testing the market for supply, and the volume was low, which suggests that selling pressure was low, at least for Friday. Back to the weekly chart again. So you can see quite clearly, here's the lows of the range, here's the mini range, here was the push higher in the background, highs of the range. This week was an inside bar on reduced volume and below average volume. The market's done a pretty good job this week. Once again, I won't be surprised to see a little test for supply in response early next week. And then if supply is low and trading conditions remain favourable, I'd expect this market to make an attempt to break out. But that would only be if trading conditions are considered favourable and supply is low on Monday. But the market's well placed to make an attempt to break out. This is the mid-cap sector. The mid-cap sector is made up of the bottom 50 stocks in the ASX 100 index. Here's the highs of the range. Lows of the range are a little more complex here. There's a little range through there where the market pushed higher, tested for supply, and then continued higher. And if we pull this line across, you'll see that it caught this close here. The market's pushed right across like that. You've got a mini range through there. The market's been consolidating here. And this week, price traded as an inside bar, inside the previous bar's range on reduced volume. So selling pressure was likely low. And this market's also in a position to make an attempt to push higher in response if trading conditions are found to be favourable next week. Now the XJO, the parent index, is up at this level or very close to it, attempting a breakout overall. So you can see how much further this market is lagging behind. There's some catch up to do. And quite often this market does catch up. When there's a breakout on or a breakdown on, if this market's lagging, it'll often catch up. So keep your eye out for a catch up in the mid caps. This is the small ordinaries index, which is the bottom 200 stocks in the ASX 300. Highs of the range through here, like this. Lows of the range through here, like this. The mini range through there. And very similar to the mid caps, prices traded inside the previous bar's range this week on reduced and below average volume, which suggests that selling pressure is low. And this market also looks poised to push higher, given any sort of reasonable trading conditions next week, or at least make an attempt to do so. This is the ASX financials sector. You can see where the market spent some time in consolidation mode here, pushed higher, broke out above this level here. Then there was 1 week of consolidation and testing for supply and a further push higher. You can see that the thrust is shortening. This is shortening of the thrust as it moves higher. This week, price has consolidated further. You've got a line going through there. Spread narrowed considerably. This is a classic test for supply. And the market saw reduced and below average volume, which suggests that selling pressure was low. And that will also open the door to an attempt to push higher in response should trading conditions continue to be favourable next week. The ASX metals and mining sector. I cover this one instead of the materials because I'm really looking at the miners more than the materials sector, which has other things included. So as the miners go, we saw back here 3 weeks ago, spread narrowed considerably as price pushed lower and down towards the lows of the range, but volume increased considerably. So that was an anomaly there. And we suggested at the time there might have been buying support present. There was a threatening down bar in response, but it's still relatively narrow spread on above average volume. And this week price has accelerated higher in response and up to the next level where you would expect supply to be waiting up here. So there's probably going to be some difficulties up there. So the more likely response is for a test for supply and some further consolidation prior to any serious attempt to push higher. The ASX gold sector, you've got the highs of the range through here. You can see where price pushed higher in response back here. The initial lows of the range came through there. They were broken here. It wasn't really a serious breakdown. It was an awkward looking push lower that really wasn't being supported, or not seriously. In the end, we've got a complex low. A complex low is where you have two lows relatively close to each other where the market really hasn't broken down. It's a messy chart, and that may be due to the increased retail involvement in this sector. The market has traded inside the previous bar's range this week, similar to the other markets, on reduced and below average volume. And although we don't get a clear look just here at where the market may move, there's no clear level to come through adjacent. Possibly there is the most likely. It's very close. But this market also looks poised to make an attempt to push higher in response if trading conditions continue to be favourable. The ASX energy sector, lows of the range come through here, and similar to the previous sectors, the market threatened to push lower here, saw buying support come in. There was some testing for supply below the previous bar's close here, and maybe a little bit of an over-enthusiastic finish for the week. And this week the market's pushed higher in response. The highs of the range come through here at the moment, but there's a large breakdown line through there. This is a more serious level. There is going to be some supply from the left here, and certainly supply up here if the market pushes that high. So this is a pretty comfortable area to move within. It's going to be a little more difficult up here, and certainly more difficult if the market attempts to continue higher after that. So similar to those other markets, a test for supply is certainly on the cards early next week, and then a continued push higher if supply is found to be low and trading conditions remain favourable. This is the ASX healthcare sector. lows of the range through here with a nice 2-bar reversal or shakeout in the background. Here's the highs of that range. The overall range comes through here. You can see the market pushed out above that level. This was an awkward looking test for supply. Test for supply really should be narrow spread down bar closing mid to high on reduced or below average volume. And that wasn't really that. It was an attempt to test, but it wasn't that good. This is a better looking test this week. Maybe even a little bit of a shakeout in the bottom of it because it's tested below the previous bar's low. But it looks much more favourable. Volume was found to be low, where the previous week volume was still above average. So this market's also poised to push higher given favourable trading conditions. This is the ASX industrials sector. Lows of the range were here, have kind of been fine-tuned to here. This week's bar traded inside the previous bar's range quite comfortably, and volume was reduced and below average. Although the market has traded below the recent lows, it's still within this bar's range, which was kind of an awkward looking shakeout. And this market also appears poised to make an attempt to push higher if trading conditions remain favourable. So that's every chart in this series looking quite comfortable. Almost every bar traded inside the previous bar's range, except for energy, I think. And volume was lower in all those charts. So the whole ASX looks quite well placed to make an attempt to push higher in response. And it will take favourable trading conditions, no doubt. But I think that's a reasonable chance next week. So watch out for a good push higher if everything comes together. Perhaps not on Monday, but from Tuesday on after the US have traded on Monday night. Okay, thanks for your time. See ya.